The cemetery smelled of rain and rotting leaves. I pressed my palm against the cold marble headstone, feeling the rough texture beneath my fingertips, tracing the letters I'd memorized months ago. Michael Chen, beloved son, gone too soon. The lie carved in stone felt heavier than the truth I carried in my womb. 6 months pregnant, and I was still bringing flowers to a man who destroyed me. The baby kicked, a flutter against my ribs, and I winced, adjusting the worn coat that no longer buttoned over my swollen belly. November wind cut through the fabric, biting at my exposed skin. I should have worn something warmer, but the electric bill had eaten most of my paycheck. Heat or a winter coat. I'd chosen heat. For the baby. I hate you, I whispered to the grave, my breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. I hate you so much, Michael. But I still came. Every Sunday. Like some pathetic ritual I couldn't break. The chrysanthemums in my hand were wilting, cheap flowers from the corner bodega that would die within days, just like everything Michael had touched. My savings account, my trust, my stupid, naive heart that had believed him when he said he loved me. I knelt carefully, my knees sinking into the damp earth, mud seeping through my threadbare jeans. The ground was cold, so cold it numbed my skin through the denim. I placed the flowers against the headstone, next to the expensive roses someone else had left. His mother, probably. She'd never known her son was a thief, a liar, a man who'd stolen $50,000 from people I didn't even know existed and left me to face the consequences. Miss Chen? I froze. The voice was smooth, cultured, with an accent I couldn't quite place. British, maybe, or something refined by expensive schools and careful elocution. It didn't belong here, among the dead and the desperate. I turned slowly, still kneeling, my hand instinctively moving to my belly. He stood 3 graves away, framed by the skeletal branches of an oak tree. Tall, impossibly still, dressed in a black wool coat that probably cost more than my rent, tailored so perfectly it seemed molded to his body. His shoes, Italian leather, pristine despite the muddy ground, gleamed even in the overcast light. But it was his face that made my breath catch. Young, mid-30s at most. Sharp jawline, olive skin, dark hair swept back with the kind of casual perfection that suggested both expense and indifference. His eyes were the color of smoke, gray, penetrating, ancient despite his youth. They studied me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Behind him, partially obscured by a black SUV with tinted windows, I could see the outline of another man, broader, watching. A driver or bodyguard, maintaining a respectful distance but present nonetheless. I'm not Miss Chen, I said, my voice rougher than I intended. We weren't married. No. He took a step closer, and I noticed he moved with deliberate grace, like a predator choosing each placement of his feet. But you were engaged. How did he know that? My heart hammered against my ribs. I struggled to stand, awkward with my center of gravity shifted, and he was there, suddenly, impossibly close, offering his hand. I stared at it. Long fingers. No rings except a single silver band on his right hand, engraved with symbols I didn't recognize. His nails were immaculate. I don't need help, I said. You're shaking. I was, but not from cold. I ignored his hand and pushed myself up, using the headstone for balance. My knees protested, mud-stained and aching. When I finally stood, he was still there, less than 2 feet away, and I could smell him now, sandalwood, and something darker, richer. Expensive cologne that probably had a French name I couldn't pronounce. Who are you? I asked, someone who knew Michael. His eyes dropped to my belly, lingered there for a heartbeat, then returned to my face. And someone who's been looking for you, Miss Hart. My maiden name. He'd done his homework. Why? The word came out as barely a whisper. Because your fiancé stole something from me. He said it conversationally, as if discussing the weather. $50,000 to be precise. Money he was supposed to deliver to certain business associates of mine in Hong Kong. Money that never arrived. My blood turned to ice. I don't have it, I said quickly. Too quickly. I don't know anything about... I know. He interrupted me gently, but there was steel beneath the courtesy. Michael gambled it away before his unfortunate accident. Poker debts in Macau, a very expensive habit he hid quite well. Accident. The word hung between us like a threat. Michael's death hadn't been an accident. The police report said brake failure, but I'd never believed it. The car was new. He'd been careful, paranoid even, in those last few weeks. Looking over his shoulder, jumping at shadows, running from someone. "So why are you here?" I asked, wrapping my arms around myself, trying to create some barrier between us. "If you know I don't have the money, because debts don't die with the debtor, Miss Hart." He tilted his head slightly, studying me like I was a puzzle he was solving piece by piece. "In my world, someone must pay. Always." The baby kicked again, harder this time, and I gasped. His eyes flickered down, softened almost imperceptibly, then hardened again. "I'm a waitress," I said, hating how my voice trembled. "I make $12 an hour plus tips. I have $300 in my bank account and $27,000 in medical debt. I can't. There's no way I can." "I'm not asking for money." Silence stretched between us, filled only by the whisper of wind through dead leaves and the distant sound of traffic beyond the cemetery gates. "Then what do you want?" I finally asked, though part of me didn't want to know the answer. He reached into his coat. I flinched and pulled out a business card. Heavy stock, cream-colored, with a single phone number embossed in black. No name, no company. "I want you to call this number," he said, holding it out. "Tonight. We'll discuss arrangements." "Arrangements for what?" "For how you'll repay your debt." He paused, his gaze dropping again to my belly. "And for how I'll ensure you and your child are protected." "Protected from what?" His smile was slight, almost sad. "From the other people Michael stole from. The ones who aren't as patient as I am." My fingers were numb as I took the card. The paper felt thick, expensive, wrong in my calloused hand. "What if I don't call?" I asked, even though we both knew the answer. He stepped back, creating distance, but his eyes never left mine. "Then I'll assume you prefer to handle your problems alone, and Miss Hart." He paused at the edge of Michael's grave, his Italian shoes inches from the fresh flowers I'd placed. "You really don't want to handle these problems alone." He turned, moving with that same fluid grace, and walked toward the waiting SUV. The door opened before he reached it, the driver anticipating, and he slid into the back seat without looking back. I stood there, frozen, clutching the business card as the vehicle pulled away, its engine a low purr that faded into the gray afternoon. It wasn't until they were gone that I looked down at what I was holding. The card was warm, as if it had been kept close to his body. The number was American, local area code, and on the back, in elegant script I hadn't noticed before, was a single word. Tomorrow. Not a suggestion. A command. I looked back at Michael's grave, at the cheap flowers already wilting in the cold, and felt something shift inside me. Not the baby. Something deeper. The last fragile thread of the girl I used to be. The one who believed in happy endings and men who told the truth, finally snapping. The stranger in the expensive coat knew things he shouldn't. About Michael. About the money. About me. And the way he'd looked at my belly, that moment of softness before the steel returned, suggested he knew something else too, something I'd been trying to ignore for 6 months. Michael's last words to me, 3 days before he died, whispered against my hair as I cried about the positive pregnancy test. "If anything happens to me, tell them you don't know anything. Tell them I acted alone, and whatever you do, don't trust anyone who comes asking about the money. Especially not him." "Who?" I'd asked, but Michael had just held me tighter, his heart racing against my cheek, and refused to answer. Now, standing in a cemetery with mud on my knees, and a stranger's business card burning in my palm, I understood. Michael hadn't been running from faceless criminals. He'd been running from one man, the man with smoke-gray eyes and a voice like silk over razors. The man who'd just given me until tomorrow to call. The man who, I was beginning to realize with creeping horror, had probably been the one to cut Michael's brakes. I started walking toward the cemetery gates, my cheap boots squelching in the mud, my pregnant belly leading the way like a shield I couldn't hide behind. The card felt heavy in my pocket. Heavier than paper should feel. Weighted with implications I didn't want to examine. Tomorrow, he'd said. Tonight, I had to decide whether to call the number of a man who might be a murderer, or wait for the other people Michael had stolen from, the ones who weren't as patient, to find me first. The baby kicked again, as if offering an opinion. I pulled my coat tighter and kept walking, even though I had no idea where I was going, only that I couldn't stay among the dead any longer. I didn't sleep that night. My studio apartment felt smaller than usual, the walls pressing in like a coffin. I sat on the second-hand couch, springs broken, upholstery stained with mysteries from previous tenants, and stared at the business card on my coffee table. Just a rectangle of cream paper, but it felt like a loaded gun. The radiator clanked and hissed, offering sporadic bursts of lukewarm heat. My neighbor's television bled through the thin walls, some action movie, explosions and gunfire. I flinched at each sound, my nerves frayed to nothing. 3:17 a.m. The glowing numbers on my microwave clock mocked me. Tomorrow had become today. I picked up the card for the 100th time, running my thumb over the embossed number. Who was he? The question circled my mind like a vulture. Michael had never mentioned names, never gave me details about the business associates he'd gotten involved with. I'd been stupid enough not to ask, content in my ignorance, wrapped in the fairy tale of our engagement. What a fool I'd been. The baby shifted, a rolling movement that made my entire belly ripple. I placed my hand over the spot, felt the tiny limbs pushing against my palm. 6 months along, and I still hadn't bought a crib, hadn't painted the nursery that didn't exist, hadn't done any of the things excited mothers-to-be were supposed to do. Because part of me had known, even before Michael died, that this wasn't going to be a happy story. My phone sat next to the card, ancient iPhone with a cracked screen, held together with a cheap case and prayers. I'd been staring at it for hours, building up courage I didn't have. The other people Michael had stolen from. The ones who aren't as patient as I am. His words echoed in my skull, mixing with the phantom sounds of Michael's voice from that last conversation. Don't trust anyone who comes asking about the money. Especially not him. But Michael was dead, and I was very much alive, with a baby coming in 3 months and nowhere to run. I picked up the phone. My hand shook as I typed the number, each digit feeling like a step off a cliff. The screen glowed blue in the darkness, harsh against my eyes. I stared at the call button, my thumb hovering. One press. That's all it would take. I thought about deleting it, pretending I'd never met him. But men like that, men who moved with predatory grace and had drivers waiting in black SUVs, didn't make suggestions. They made statements of fact. He would find me again whether I called or not. At least this way, I had some illusion of control. I pressed call before I could change my mind. It rang once, twice. Miss Hart. His voice, smooth and unsurprised. Not a question. He'd been waiting. You're calling early. I glanced at the clock. 3:23 a.m. I couldn't sleep. Neither could I. A pause, and I heard something in the background. Classical music, soft and melancholic. Piano. I assume you've made your decision. I don't have a choice, I said, hating how defeated I sounded. There's always a choice. His tone shifted, became almost gentle. You could run, disappear, change your name. I'd find you eventually, but you could try. And then what? You'd kill me like you killed Michael? Silence stretched between us, heavy and dangerous. When he spoke again, his voice had gone cold. Michael's death was his own doing. Brake failure is a common occurrence in poorly maintained vehicles. The police ruled it an accident. The car was 3 months old. Accidents happen, Miss Hart, especially to people who steal from dangerous men and think they can gamble their way out of debt. He paused. But to answer your unspoken question, no, I didn't kill him. Though I won't mourn him either. I wanted to believe him. God help me. Some desperate part of me wanted to believe this stranger over my own instincts. What do you want from me? I asked, pulling my knees up as much as my belly allowed, trying to make myself smaller. I want you to meet me for breakfast, 7 a.m. There's a restaurant called Luciano's on 5th Avenue. My driver will pick you up at 6:30. I don't even know your name, Dante. He said it like a confession. Dante Vitelli. Italian. That explained the accent underneath the British Polish, the olive skin, the way he moved like European aristocracy, mixed with something far more dangerous. I'm not getting in a car with a stranger, I said, even though we both knew I would. Then meet me there yourself. But Miss Hart... His voice dropped, became intimate, almost a whisper. Wear something warm. You were shivering yesterday, and I don't want you catching cold. It's bad for the baby." The line went dead before I could respond. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, listening to silence and trying to process what had just happened. He'd noticed me shivering, cared, or at least pretended to care, about my health. The concern felt genuine, which somehow made it more terrifying. Men like Dante Vitelli didn't care about waitresses with mud on their jeans, unless they wanted something. 6:30 arrived faster than I wanted. I'd managed 2 hours of restless sleep, haunted by dreams of car crashes and men in expensive coats. My shower was lukewarm, the building's hot water inconsistent at best, but I stayed under the spray until my fingers pruned, trying to wash away the anxiety that clung to my skin. My wardrobe options were limited. Maternity clothes from Goodwill, stretched thin and faded. I chose black leggings and an oversized gray sweater that hid most of my belly, paired with my only winter coat, the one that didn't button anymore. My boots were scuffed, the leather cracking at the toes, but they were all I had. I looked in the mirror and saw a ghost. Pale skin, dark circles under my eyes, hair pulled back in a messy bun because I didn't have the energy for anything else. 26 years old and I looked 40. Pregnancy was supposed to give you a glow. I just looked exhausted. The knock came precisely at 6:30. I jumped, my heart slamming against my ribs. Through the peephole, I saw him, the driver from yesterday, broad-shouldered, expressionless, wearing a dark suit that screamed professional security. He didn't look at the door, just stood there with the patience of someone accustomed to waiting. I opened it slowly, keeping the chain lock attached. "Miss Hart." His voice was gravel, American accent, military bearing. "Mr. Vitelli sent me to escort you. I said I'd meet him there myself." "Yes, ma'am." He anticipated that. The driver, bodyguard, whatever he was, pulled out an envelope. "He asked me to give you this." I took it through the gap, my fingers brushing his briefly. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, matching the business card. Inside, I found 5 crisp $100 bills and a note in elegant handwriting. "For a taxi, if you prefer. Though I promise Marco is an excellent driver and won't bite. D $500. Casual money to him, rent money to me." I stared at the bills, feeling the weight of obligation settle over my shoulders like chains. "Mr. Vitelli said to tell you that breakfast is on him," Marco continued, his expression neutral, "and that Luciano's has excellent prenatal smoothies. Good for the baby." Of course he did. I looked at Marco, then at the money in my hand, then at my apartment, peeling paint, broken furniture, the smell of mildew that never quite went away no matter how much I cleaned. What was I doing? Getting in a car with a man who worked for someone I didn't know, to meet with someone who might be a criminal, to discuss a debt I couldn't pay, but the alternative was waiting for the other people Michael had stolen from, the ones who weren't patient. I closed the door, slid off the chain, and grabbed my purse. "Let me get my keys," I said. Marco nodded once, professionally, and waited. The SUV was exactly as I remembered. Black, pristine, windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. Marco opened the back door for me, and I hesitated only a moment before climbing in, awkward with my belly, my boots slipping on the running board. The interior smelled like leather and that same expensive cologne. Dante's scent, lingering. We pulled away from my building, and I watched through the window as my neighborhood disappeared. Graffitied walls, corner bodegas, chain-link fences, heading toward a part of the city I only saw in movies. Marco drove in silence, professional and smooth, navigating traffic with the ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. I noticed his eyes constantly checking the mirrors, scanning, alert, looking for threats or tales. What kind of life required that level of vigilance? 20 minutes later, we pulled up in front of Luciano's. I'd seen places like this before, but never imagined I'd enter one. The restaurant occupied the ground floor of a building that probably cost more than I'd earn in my lifetime. Marble facade, gold-trimmed windows, a doorman in a uniform that looked like it belonged to European royalty. Marco opened my door. "Mr. Vitelli is waiting inside. Private dining room, 2nd floor." "Private dining room," I repeated numbly. "Yes, ma'am. The hostess will show you up." I stood on the sidewalk, feeling profoundly out of place in my Goodwill clothes and cracked boots. The doorman watched me with barely concealed disdain, his eyes lingering on my pregnant belly, making calculations about what kind of woman I must be. I lifted my chin and walked inside anyway. The interior was breathtaking, all cream marble and crystal chandeliers, fresh flowers in arrangements that probably cost more than my monthly rent. The scent hit me immediately: coffee, fresh-baked bread, something rich and buttery that made my empty stomach clench. A hostess appeared, polished and perfect in a black dress that cost more than my wardrobe. "Miss Hart?" They were expecting me. "This way, please." She led me through the main dining room, half empty at this hour, but the few patrons present looked like they belonged. Expensive suits, designer handbags, the casual confidence of people who'd never worried about rent or electric bills. We climbed a curved staircase to the second floor, down a hallway lined with original artwork, to a door at the end. The hostess knocked once, then opened it. Dante Vitelli stood by the window, silhouetted against the morning light flooding through floor-to-ceiling glass. He turned as I entered, and I saw him clearly for the first time without the cemetery's gray filter. He was beautiful, not handsome. Beautiful. Sharp features that could have been carved from marble, dark hair that curled slightly at his collar, those smoke-gray eyes that seemed to see through skin and bone straight to the secrets beneath. He wore a charcoal suit, perfectly tailored, with a black shirt underneath, no tie. The top button undone, revealing a glimpse of his throat. He looked like Sin dressed in Armani. "Miss Hart." He smiled, and it transformed his face from coldly beautiful to something warmer, almost human. "Thank you for coming. Please sit." The table was set for two, white linens and silver so polished I could see my reflection, a single rose in a crystal vase. Orange juice already poured, coffee steaming in delicate china cups. I sat because my knees were shaking. Dante took the seat across from me, and I noticed how he moved, controlled, deliberate, like every gesture had been calculated for maximum effect. "You look tired," he said, concern creasing his brow. "Did you sleep at all? Did you?" His smile widened slightly. "Touché." "No. I had business to attend to." He poured himself coffee, added nothing to it. "But unlike you, I don't have a child depending on my rest." "Why do you care?" The question burst out before I could stop it. "About the baby. About whether I'm cold or tired or... Why does any of that matter to you?" Dante set down his cup carefully, his eyes never leaving mine. "Because, Miss Hart," he said quietly, "that child is innocent of its father's sins, and despite what you might think of me, I don't punish the innocent. Just the guilty. Always. No hesitation. No apology." A waiter appeared, silent, efficient, placing plates in front of us. Eggs, Benedict, fresh fruit, pastries that looked like art. The smell made my mouth water despite my nerves. "Eat," Dante said. It wasn't quite a command, but close. "You're too thin. When did you last have a proper meal?" I stared at the food, at this man who might be a monster asking about my nutrition, and felt something crack inside my chest. 2 days ago, I admitted. "The diner where I work gives me 1 free meal per shift." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "You're 6 months pregnant and eating 1 meal every 2 days? I'm eating enough. The baby's fine." The doctor said, "When did you last see a doctor?" I looked down at my plate, shame burning my cheeks. 3 months ago. I missed my last 2 appointments. The copays, Christo. He breathed the curse like a prayer, running his hand through his hair, disturbing its perfect arrangement. When he looked at me again, something had changed in his eyes. Calculation mixed with what might have been anger, but not at me. "Eat. Now, we'll discuss business after." I picked up my fork, my hands trembling slightly, and tasted the most incredible food I'd ever had in my life. And across the table, Dante Vitelli watched me eat with an expression I couldn't read. Intensity, and something else. Something possessive that made my skin prickle with awareness, like he'd already decided something about me. Something I wasn't going to like. I ate like I was starving, because I was. The food dissolved on my tongue, buttery, rich, perfectly seasoned. I tried to maintain some dignity, to eat slowly, but my body had other ideas. The baby seemed to wake up with each bite, kicking enthusiastically, as if celebrating the sudden influx of actual nutrition. Dante watched me the entire time. Not in a creepy way, exactly, more like a scientist observing a fascinating specimen, or a predator studying prey. His coffee sat untouched, growing cold, while his eyes tracked every movement of my fork from plate to mouth. "You're not eating," I said finally, self-conscious under his scrutiny. "I ate earlier." He leaned back in his chair, the movement casual but somehow still controlled. "I prefer to watch you enjoy your meal." Heat crept up my neck. "That's weird." "Perhaps." His lips curved slightly, but true nonetheless. I set down my fork, the plate half empty but my stomach already protesting the unfamiliar fullness. "You said we'd discuss business after. I'm done eating." "You've barely touched your food. I'm full." A lie. I could have eaten everything on the table. But I needed answers more than I needed food, and the way he kept staring at me made my skin feel too tight. "What do you want from me, Mr. Vitelli?" "Dante." He corrected me softly. "Mr. Vitelli was my father. Fine. Dante, what do you want?" He stood, moving to the window, hands in his pockets. The morning light caught the silver in his hair, not gray from age, just natural highlights that made him look sophisticated rather than old. I guessed him at 35, maybe 36, young for the kind of power he seemed to wield. "Michael stole $50,000 from me," he said, his back to me, money that was meant for a very important transaction. When it didn't arrive, people were upset. Dangerous people who don't accept excuses. And you had to pay them back, I guessed. I had to make them whole, yes, which I did, from my own accounts. So now Michael's debt is to me, not to them. He turned, leaning against the window frame, backlit like some Renaissance painting. A debt that, as I said, doesn't die with the debtor. $50,000, I laughed, the sound bitter. I couldn't pay you $50,000 if I had 10 lifetimes. You've seen where I live. You know what I make. This is insane. I don't want your money, Elena. He'd used my first name. I hadn't given him permission, but hearing it in his mouth, soft, slightly accented, intimate, made something flutter in my chest that wasn't the baby. Then what? "I want you to work for me." I stared at him. "Work for you?" "Doing what?" "Living." He said it simply, like it was obvious. "In one of my properties, under my protection, until the debt is repaid through service." Service. The word tasted wrong. "What kind of service?" "Whatever I require." His eyes held mine, challenging me to look away. I didn't. "Cooking, perhaps. Household management. Companionship when I have business dinners that require a softer presence. You want a maid. I want you safe." He pushed off from the window, closing the distance between us in 3 long strides. Suddenly he was there, leaning over my chair, his hands braced on the armrests, caging me in. I could smell him now. Sandalwood and something spicier, underneath. "Do you know what happens to pregnant women who can't pay their debts in my world, Elena?" I shook my head, unable to speak. "They disappear." His voice dropped to a whisper, his face inches from mine. "They're sold to men who don't care about consent or screaming. They give birth in basements or back alleys, and their children are taken from them before the cord is even cut. They become ghosts, and the people who make them disappear don't lose sleep over it." Terror clawed up my throat. "You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to save you." He reached up, and I flinched, but his hand only brushed a strand of hair from my face. Gentle, almost tender. "Michael didn't just steal from me, Elena. He stole from the Zhao Syndicate. Chinese organized crime. They've been looking for him for months. When they couldn't find him, they started looking for his associates. His family. I'm not his family. We weren't married. You're carrying his child. That's family enough." His thumb traced my cheekbone, and I was too frozen to pull away. "They found his mother 2 weeks ago, asked her questions about Michael's whereabouts, his finances, his connections. She told them she didn't know anything. And now she's in a hospital in Queens with a broken jaw and 3 fractured ribs." His hand dropped away, and he straightened, stepping back. "They'll find you eventually, Elena. It's only a matter of time, and when they do, they won't be as patient as I am. They won't offer you breakfast and ask nicely." My hands moved to my belly, protective, instinctive. "Why would you protect me? What do you gain?" "Justice." He said it like it was simple. Michael stole from me, yes, but he also destroyed something I was building. A partnership with people who don't forgive easily. His theft made me look weak, unreliable. And in my world, perception is everything. So I'm what? Revenge? No. He returned to his seat, picked up his cold coffee, drank it anyway. Your restitution. And insurance. When the Zhao Syndicate comes looking, and they will, I'll be able to tell them truthfully that Michael's fiancée is under my protection. That she's working off his debt. That justice, in its own way, is being served. They'll believe you. They'll respect the boundaries I set. His smile was cold, because they know what happens to people who don't. I processed this, trying to think through the panic fogging my brain. And if I refuse? If I say no to your arrangement? Then I'll wish you the best of luck. He set down his cup, the china clicking against the saucer with finality. And I'll have Marco drive you home. You'll be on your own. No protection, no resources. Just you and your baby against people who hurt pregnant women for sport. That's not a choice. No, he agreed. It's not. But it's the only one you have. Silence stretched between us. Outside the window, the city moved on. Cars honking. People rushing to their normal lives, oblivious to the negotiation happening in this private room. How long? I asked quietly. How long would I have to work for you, until I decide the debt is paid? He must have seen something in my face because he added, I'm not unreasonable, Elena. A year, perhaps. Maybe less, if you prove valuable. And the baby? Will be cared for. The best pediatricians, a nursery prepared. Anything you need. He paused. I'm not a monster. Children are precious, sacred. I would never harm a child. But you'd harm me. I'd never harm you either. His eyes held mine, and I saw truth there, or something close to it. Not unless you betray me. Loyalty, Elena. That's all I require. Loyalty and discretion. In exchange, you'll have safety. Security, medical care. A place to live where the heat works and the walls don't have mold. He'd noticed. Of course he'd noticed. I need time to think. You have until we finish this meal. He gestured to my half-eaten plate. After that, my offer expires. You walk out that door without agreeing, and you're on your own. That's not enough time to make a decision like this. It's more time than the Zhao Syndicate will give you. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, his face serious. They could be watching your building right now, Elena, waiting to see where you go, who you talk to. I had Marco check before we picked you up this morning. There was a black sedan parked across from your apartment. 2 men inside, Asian, watching your windows. Ice flooded my veins. You're lying. Am I? He pulled out his phone, swiped through it, then turned it to face me. The photo was grainy but clear enough. My building's entrance, a dark sedan visible in the frame. Through the windshield, I could make out 2 shapes. Men. Watching. That was taken at 6 this morning. Dante said quietly. They're still there. Marco confirmed it before we came upstairs. My hands shook. I clasped them together in my lap, trying to hold on to something. Anything. How do I know you didn't stage that? Put your own people there to scare me? You don't. He pocketed the phone. But does it matter? Either those are my men, which means I have the resources and interest to find you anywhere, or they're Zhao's men, which means you're already being hunted. Either way, your safest option is accepting my protection. God, I hated him. Hated his logic. His calm. The way he'd backed me into a corner and made it seem like he was doing me a favor. But he was right. I had nowhere to go, no money to run, no one to protect me. Michael's mother was in the hospital. Michael was dead. I was alone. Except I wasn't alone. I had a baby coming. A tiny life depending on me to keep us both alive. If I agree, I said slowly, I want it in writing. A contract, with terms, clear expectations, an end date. Dante's expression shifted. Surprise? Then something like respect. Smart. Yes. My lawyer will draft something this afternoon. You'll have 48 hours to review it. Have your own lawyer look at it, if you wish. I can't afford a lawyer. I'll provide one. Independent of my own. Someone to represent your interests. Why would you do that? Because I want you to understand exactly what you're agreeing to. He stood, came around the table, and offered his hand. No confusion. No misunderstandings. Just a clear arrangement between us. I looked at his hand. Long fingers. That silver ring. The hand that might have signed Michael's death warrant. Or might have spared me from worse. The hand that could protect me or destroy me, depending on his mood. I stood slowly, my belly brushing the table edge, and placed my hand in his. His grip was warm, firm. He didn't shake, just held my hand, his thumb brushing over my knuckles in a gesture that felt strangely intimate. "You're making the right choice," he said softly. "I'm making the only choice. Sometimes they're the same thing." He released my hand, and I felt the absence of his warmth like a chill. "Marco will take you home to pack. Bring whatever you need. Anything that matters to you. The rest, we'll replace." "I'm moving in today?" "You're moving in now. This morning. Before whoever's watching your building decides to make a move." His face hardened. "I don't take chances with what's mine, Elena. And as of this moment, you're under my protection. Which makes you mine." The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, it sent a different kind of shiver down my spine. "Where will I be living?" I asked. "My penthouse, top floor. You'll have your own suite. Privacy. But close enough that my security can monitor all access points." He moved to the door, opened it. "It's the safest location I have." "You mean I'll be living with you?" "Yes." "In your home?" "Yes." "That wasn't part of the deal you described." He looked back at me, and something in his eyes made my breath catch. "The deal is that I keep you safe, Elena. I can't do that if you're somewhere I can't reach. You'll live in my home, under my roof, where I can see with my own eyes that you're protected. Or where you can control me, that too." He didn't deny it, but I prefer to think of it as insurance. For both of us. I wanted to argue, to insist on my own space, my own life, but the photo of those men watching my building flashed through my mind. Michael's mother in the hospital, the baby growing inside me, depending on me to make smart choices even when all the choices were terrible. "Fine," I said. "I'll pack." Dante smiled, and it reached his eyes this time, genuine pleasure mixed with something darker. "Excellent. I think you'll find the accommodations more than satisfactory." He guided me out with a hand on the small of my back, proprietary and gentle at once. Marco waited in the hallway, silent as a shadow, falling into step behind us. As we descended the stairs, passing the perfect people in their perfect clothes eating their perfect breakfasts, I caught our reflection in a gilded mirror. Me, in my Goodwill sweater and cracked boots, pregnant and pale. Dante, immaculate and dangerous, his hand on my back like I belonged to him. We looked like a photograph that didn't make sense. Beauty and the Beast, predator and prey, captor and captive, and I'd just agreed to walk into his cage voluntarily. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building in Tribeca that I'd only ever seen in magazines. Marco pulled up to the entrance, a different building than the restaurant, but equally intimidating. Doormen in tailored uniforms. Marble everything. The kind of place where my monthly rent wouldn't cover a week's parking fees. I'd spent the ride back to my apartment in silence, processing. Packing had taken less than 20 minutes. Everything I owned fit into 2 battered suitcases and 3 garbage bags. Clothes that barely fit. Books I'd collected from free boxes. A shoebox of photographs. My mother before the cancer. My father before he left. Me and Michael before everything went wrong. Dante had waited in the SUV while I packed, giving me privacy. Or maybe he just didn't want to see how poor I really was. Either way, Marco had carried everything down without comment, his expression neutral even when one of the garbage bags split and my worn underwear spilled onto the sidewalk. Now we stood in an elevator that required a key card to access the penthouse level. Marco swiped his, pressed the button marked PH, and we ascended in silence. The doors opened directly into the apartment. Not a hallway, not a landing. The elevator opened into a foyer that was larger than my entire studio. I stepped out onto marble floors, real marble, veined with gold, polished to a mirror shine. The ceiling soared at least 15 feet high. To my right, floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of lower Manhattan that took my breath away. The Hudson River glittered in the late morning sun. The Statue of Liberty was visible in the distance, small but distinct. "Christo," I breathed. "Miss Hart." A woman appeared from somewhere to my left. 50s, elegant, wearing a crisp gray dress that screamed professional housekeeper. "Welcome. I'm Mrs. Chen. I manage the household." Chen. Like Michael. The coincidence felt cruel. "Thank you," I managed. "Mr. Vitelli asked me to show you to your suite and help you get settled." Her eyes dropped briefly to my belly, but her expression remained perfectly neutral. "If you'll follow me." She led me through the penthouse, a tour that felt surreal. Living room with furniture that looked like modern art. Kitchen with appliances I couldn't name. A dining room with a table that could seat 20. Library with leather-bound books and a fireplace. Everything decorated in blacks, grays, and whites. Minimalist. Expensive. Cold. We climbed a floating staircase, actual stairs that seemed to hang in midair, to the second level. "Mr. Vitelli's private quarters are in the east wing," Mrs. Chen explained, gesturing to a hallway I couldn't see down. "Your suite is here, in the west wing, completely separate. Your own entrance, your own space." She opened a door, and I stepped into what she called a suite, but which was actually larger than most apartments. The bedroom was done in soft creams and pale blues. A king-size bed dominated one wall, dressed in linens that looked like they cost more than my car. Back when I'd had a car, French doors opened onto a private balcony. The view was different from downstairs. Facing north, I could see Central Park in the distance, a green rectangle among the gray buildings. "Your bathroom." Mrs. Chen opened another door, revealing marble and chrome, a soaking tub that could fit 3 people, a separate shower with multiple heads, heated floors, towels so plush they looked like clouds. "This is too much," I said. "Mr. Vitelli insists on comfort for his guests." She moved through the suite, opening doors. "Walk-in closet here. We'll need to get you some proper clothes. I've taken your measurements from what you were wearing and contacted Mr. Vitelli's personal shopper. She'll bring options this afternoon. I have clothes." Mrs. Chen's eyes flicked to the garbage bags Marco had deposited in the corner. "Yes, of course. But Mr. Vitelli prefers a certain standard when you accompany him to dinners or events." Right. Because I wasn't just living here. I was working, playing a role. "The nursery is through here." She opened another door, and my heart stopped. The room was perfect. Soft yellow walls, white furniture. Crib, changing table, rocking chair, shelves already stocked with books and toys. A mobile hung over the crib, delicate stars and moons that caught the light. The carpet was thick and soft, cream-colored, spotless. "Mr. Vitelli had it prepared this morning," Mrs. Chen said. "After your breakfast. He called ahead, gave specific instructions. Everything is ready. We just need the baby." I couldn't speak. Couldn't process that someone, that Dante, had done this. Had thought about what a baby would need and made it happen in a matter of hours. Why? The word came out broken. Mrs. Chen's expression softened slightly. "Mr. Vitelli takes care of what's his. You're under his protection now. That means the baby is too. What's his?" There was that phrase again. "I should let you rest," Mrs. Chen continued. "You've had an eventful morning. Lunch will be served at 1 in the small dining room downstairs. Or I can bring something up, if you prefer." "Where is he?" "Dante, Mr. Vitelli had business to attend to. He'll return this evening." She moved toward the door. "If you need anything at all, press 9 on any house phone. It rings directly to my office. I'm here to help, Miss Hart." She left, closing the door with a soft click. I stood in the middle of the bedroom, my bedroom apparently, and tried to process the last 6 hours. This morning, I'd been living in a studio with broken heat and mold on the walls. Now I was standing in a penthouse that probably cost more per month than I'd earn in a lifetime, surrounded by luxury I couldn't comprehend, carrying the child of a dead thief, under the protection of a man who might be a monster. The baby kicked, hard, right under my ribs. "I know," I whispered, placing my hand over the spot. "I know this is insane, but we're safe. For now. That has to count for something." I walked to the French doors, opened them, stepped onto the balcony. The wind was cold, biting, but the view was incredible. Manhattan spread before me like a living organism, moving, breathing, indifferent to the lives being lived in its buildings. Somewhere down there, in a hospital in Queens, Michael's mother was recovering from broken bones, inflicted by people looking for answers about her son. Somewhere down there, men in a black sedan might still be watching my empty apartment, waiting for me to return. Somewhere down there, people were living normal lives, working regular jobs, coming home to regular families, worrying about regular problems. I wasn't one of them anymore. I'd crossed a threshold I couldn't uncross. Made a deal with a devil I barely knew. And the most terrifying part? Standing here, looking out at this view, feeling the wind on my face and knowing that a heated bathroom and a prepared nursery waited behind me. The most terrifying part was that some small, traitorous piece of me was relieved. Dante returned at 7:30 that evening. I heard him before I saw him, the elevator chiming, voices in the foyer, Marco's rumble, another man's voice, unfamiliar. Then Dante, quiet but commanding, giving instructions I couldn't make out. I'd spent the afternoon in my suite. Mrs. Chen had brought lunch, soup and a sandwich that tasted homemade, fresh fruit, sparkling water. A personal shopper had arrived with racks of clothes, maternity wear, but expensive. Soft fabrics, perfect tailoring. I'd tried on a few pieces, hating how good they looked, how well they fit. Now I stood in the nursery, running my hand over the crib rail, trying to imagine my baby sleeping here. Safe, warm, protected. It suits you. I spun around. Dante stood in the doorway, still in his suit but with his jacket removed, tie loosened. He looked tired. Shadows under his eyes, a tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there this morning. "You startled me," I said. "My apologies." He stepped into the room, his eyes scanning the space. "Mrs. Chen said you seemed pleased with the arrangements." "It's beautiful. Too beautiful. I struggled for words. "You didn't have to do all this." "Yes, I did." He moved to the window, looked out at the darkening city. A child deserves a proper space. Safety, comfort. These things matter, even when the child isn't yours. He turned, and something flickered in his eyes. Something I couldn't read, especially then. Silence settled between us. I became acutely aware that we were alone, in a room designed for the baby I carried, in his home, under his protection, under his control. "My lawyer drafted the contract," he said, pulling a folded document from his pocket. "As promised, your independent counsel will receive a copy tomorrow morning, but I wanted you to have this tonight. Read it. Consider it. We'll sign on Friday, assuming you're satisfied with the terms." I took the papers, my fingers brushing his. The contact sent electricity up my arm, startling, unwelcome. "Thank you," I said. "Elena." He said my name like a caress. "There's something else we need to discuss." My stomach tightened. "What?" "The Zhao Syndicate knows you're missing. Your building superintendent confirmed you moved out. They'll be looking for you." He paused. "I've put out word through certain channels that you're under my protection. That should give them pause. But it also means you can't leave this building without security. Marco or one of my other men will accompany you everywhere. Always. So I'm a prisoner. You're protected." He closed the distance between us, and suddenly he was there, inches away, his presence overwhelming. "There's a difference. Is there?" I looked up at him, refusing to back down, even though every instinct screamed at me to step away. "You control where I go, what I wear, who I see. How is that different from a cage, because you can leave anytime you want?" His hand came up, cupped my jaw, tilted my face toward the light. "Say the word, Elena. Tell me you want out. I'll have Marco drive you anywhere you want to go. Tonight, right now." His thumb brushed my cheekbone, the touch achingly gentle. "But we both know you won't," he continued softly. "Because out there, you're alone. Hunted. At risk. In here, you're safe. Cared for. The baby will have everything it needs. So yes, there are rules, boundaries. But they exist to protect you, not to punish you. And if I break them..." His eyes darkened. "Then we'll discuss consequences, but I don't think you will. You're smarter than Michael, more careful. You understand the value of survival." "You mean I'm a coward?" "I mean you're a mother." His hand dropped away, and I felt the loss of his warmth like a physical ache. And mothers do whatever it takes to protect their children, even make deals with men like me. He was right, and I hated him for it. "I should let you rest," he said, stepping back, creating distance. "Mrs. Chen mentioned you barely touched your lunch. Dinner is at 8. I'd like you to join me. Is that a request or an order? A smile ghosted across his lips. Does it matter? Yes. Then it's a request. He moved toward the door, paused at the threshold. But I hope you'll accept. I eat alone too often. It would be nice to have company. He left before I could respond, his footsteps fading down the hallway. I stood in the nursery, clutching the contract to my chest, trying to calm my racing heart. The way he'd touched me, gentle, possessive, like I was something precious that might break. The way he'd looked at me, intensity and hunger and something deeper, more dangerous. The way my body had responded, heat and awareness and a pull I absolutely could not afford to feel. I was in trouble. Not from the Zhao Syndicate or Michael's debts or the men watching my apartment. From Dante Vitelli himself, because some part of me, some stupid, desperate, traitorous part, wanted to believe he actually cared, that his concern was real, that this wasn't just about debt and obligation and control. I looked down at the contract in my hands, at the dense legal language I'd need hours to parse. Then I looked at the nursery, perfect and ready, waiting for a baby who hadn't even been born yet. And I made a decision. I'd go to dinner. I'd play his game. I'd be whatever he needed me to be. Because I had 3 months until this baby came. And I needed to be smart, strategic. I needed to understand who Dante Vitelli really was, captor or protector, monster or savior, or maybe something more complicated than either. I went to my suite, looked through the new clothes, and chose a dress. Navy blue, soft fabric, empire waist that accommodated my belly without making me look shapeless. The shopper had included flats, thank God. I put them on, looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like someone else, someone who belonged in penthouses and private dining rooms, someone who hadn't spent the last 6 months eating 1 meal every 2 days, someone who might actually deserve the protection of a man like Dante Vitelli. I almost believed it. At 8 o'clock exactly, I walked downstairs to find him waiting in what Mrs. Chen had called the small dining room, though it could easily seat 8. He'd changed. Black shirt, charcoal slacks, no jacket. He looked younger without the armor of his suit, more human, more dangerous. Elena. He stood when I entered, pulled out my chair. You look beautiful. The dress is new. It's not the dress. His eyes held mine as I sat. Though it suits you. Dinner was already served. Some kind of pasta, salad, fresh bread, wine for him, sparkling water for me. We ate in silence for a few minutes. The only sounds are silverware against china and the distant hum of the city beyond the windows. The contract, I said finally. The end date. It says 1 year or when you deem the debt satisfied, whichever comes first. That's vague. Intentionally so. He sipped his wine. I can't predict what the next year will bring. But I promise you, Elena, I won't keep you longer than necessary. How will you know when it's satisfied? He set down his glass, looked at me with those smoke-gray eyes that seemed to see everything. When I feel the scales have balanced, when justice has been served, when you've proven your loyalty beyond doubt, and if the Zhao Syndicate comes for me anyway, even with your protection, they won't. Absolute certainty. I've made it very clear what will happen to anyone who touches what's mine. They'll respect that. Or they'll die trying not to. What's mine? Again. Why do you keep saying that? I asked. I'm not yours. This is a business arrangement. Is it? He leaned back, studying me. You're living in my home, eating my food, under my protection, wearing clothes I provided. By any definition, Elena, you're mine. That's not... And the sooner you accept that, he continued, his voice dropping to something almost gentle, the easier this will be, for both of us. The baby kicked, hard enough that I gasped. My hand flew to my belly. Dante's eyes followed the movement. Is it kicking? Yes. May I? He gestured to my belly. Every instinct screamed no. This was too intimate, too personal, too much. But I found myself nodding. He came around the table, knelt beside my chair. His hand hovered over my belly, waiting for permission. I took his wrist, guided his palm to where the baby was moving. His hand was warm through the fabric of my dress, large enough to span almost my entire belly. We stayed like that, frozen, waiting. The baby kicked again, right under his palm. Dante's expression transformed. Wonder and something fiercer, more possessive. Fort, he breathed. Strong. Like you, I said before I could stop myself. His eyes met mine, and the intensity there stole my breath. Like you, Elena. Surviving against impossible odds. We were too close. His hand on my belly, his face inches from mine, his scent, sandalwood and danger, flooding my senses. I should pull away, should remind him this was business, should remember he might have killed Michael. But I didn't move, and neither did he. Elena, he said softly, you need to understand something. What? I will protect you, and this child, with everything I have. No one will hurt you while you're under my roof. You have my word. Why? The question came out broken. Why do you care? His thumb moved, just slightly, stroking over where the baby had kicked, because some things are worth protecting. And you, Elena Hart. His eyes burned into mine. You're worth protecting. Then he stood, stepped back, returned to his seat like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just cracked something open inside my chest. We finished dinner in loaded silence. And I knew, with terrifying certainty, that I was already in deeper than I'd intended. Already feeling things I shouldn't feel. Already dependent on a man who held all the power. Already his, whether I admitted it or not. Block 5. Final. 3 weeks passed in a blur of careful routine and growing tension. I settled into the penthouse like a bird in a gilded cage, comfortable, but trapped. Mrs. Chen ran the household with military precision. Marco drove me to prenatal appointments at a private clinic where doctors who actually smiled asked questions about my health. The personal shopper continued delivering clothes I'd never have chosen, but couldn't deny looked good. And Dante was everywhere and nowhere at once. He worked long hours, disappearing before dawn and returning after dark. But his presence saturated the apartment. I'd find notes left on the kitchen counter. Make sure she eats breakfast. TV. The nursery grew more elaborate. A custom rocker appeared, then blackout curtains, then a sound machine that played ocean waves. He joined me for dinner most nights. Those meals became the center of my day, something I both dreaded and anticipated. We talked, carefully, dancing around topics that mattered. He asked about the baby, I asked about his business, and he deflected with practiced ease. Import-export, he'd say with a slight smile that told me he knew I didn't believe him. Of what? Whatever needs importing or exporting. I learned things anyway, through observation. The phone calls he took in Italian, his voice hard and cold, the way Marco checked every room before Dante entered. The night I came downstairs for water and found him in his study, shirt sleeves rolled up, reviewing documents that looked like shipping manifests, while another man, all tattoos and menace, reported on the situation in Red Hook. He'd looked up when I appeared in the doorway, and something dangerous had flashed in his eyes before smoothing into careful neutrality. Elena, you should be sleeping. I was thirsty. Mrs. Chen left water in your suite. I wanted to walk. The baby gets restless. He'd studied me for a long moment, then dismissed the tattooed man with a gesture. Wait downstairs, Luca. Once we were alone, Dante had poured me water from a crystal decanter on his desk, handed it to me, watched me drink. You're not sleeping well? He'd observed. Neither are you. I never do. He gestured to the documents on his desk. Too much to manage. Too many people depending on decisions I make. People like Luca, and Marco. And 200 others who work for me in various capacities. Doing what? His smile had been razor sharp. Whatever needs doing. I'd set down the empty glass. You're not going to tell me, are you, what you really do? Would it change anything if I did? I don't know. Then why ask? He'd stood, rounded the desk, stopped close enough that I could see the faint scar along his jawline, something I'd noticed but never asked about. You're safe here, Elena. What I do outside these walls doesn't concern you. That's the arrangement. The arrangement where I'm yours but know nothing about you? Precisely. No apology in his voice. But then his hand had come up, brushed my hair back from my face in a gesture that was becoming familiar. Too familiar. Go to sleep, he'd said softly. You need rest. I'd gone, but not before catching sight of one of the documents on his desk. A shipping invoice with Chinese characters and a logo I'd seen before. On the business card Michael had hidden in his wallet, the one I'd found after he died. The Zhao Syndicate. Dante wasn't just protecting me from them. He was doing business with them. The contract signing happened on a Friday morning, 4 weeks after I'd moved in. The independent lawyer Dante had provided, a sharp woman named Catherine Meyer, who'd reviewed every clause with ruthless precision, sat beside me in Dante's study. Across the desk, Dante watched us with patient eyes while his own lawyer, an older man named Stefano, adjusted his reading glasses. "The terms are fair," Catherine said, though her tone suggested she didn't entirely approve. "More than fair, actually. Medical care, housing, a living stipend, post-contract support including 6 months of continued housing if needed. Miss Hart, I've reviewed hundreds of domestic service contracts. This is unusually generous." "What's the catch?" I asked, looking at Dante. "No catch." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Just expectations. You'll manage certain household duties. Accompany me to business dinners that require a softer presence. Represent my household appropriately." "Be your pretty accessory," I said flatly. "Be my companion." He corrected me gently. "There's a difference." Catherine cleared her throat. "There's also a morality clause. You agree not to engage in romantic or sexual relationships with anyone outside Mr. Vitelli's household for the duration of the contract." Heat flooded my face. "Why would that matter?" "Because appearances matter in my world," Dante said, his voice neutral but his eyes intense. "You're under my protection. That means you're associated with me. I can't have you becoming entangled with someone who might compromise that protection or use you to get to me. So I'm not allowed to date." "You're 7 months pregnant, Elena. Dating seems impractical." A hint of amusement colored his tone. "But after the baby, we'll renegotiate terms when relevant." He gestured to the contract. "Everything is outlined clearly. 1 year. Renewable if both parties agree. Severable with 30 days' notice, provided you have alternate safe housing arranged." I read through it again, though I'd memorized every word over the past week. Catherine had explained each clause, answered every question. It was, as she'd said, more than fair. It was also a chain, golden and comfortable, but still a chain. "The baby," I said. "What happens when—" "The nursery is yours for as long as you need it. You'll have full support. Nanny if you want one, though that's your choice. Medical care. Everything." Dante's expression softened slightly. "The child isn't part of the contract, Elena. The child is innocent, protected because it should be, not because I require it." I looked at Catherine. It's all there, in writing, legally binding. I picked up the pen. Heavy, expensive, probably worth more than everything I'd owned before moving here. My hand shook as I signed my name. Dante signed next, his signature bold and confident, then the lawyers witnessing. It was done. I belonged to Dante Vitelli for 1 year. Or until he decided otherwise. That night he threw a dinner party. I'd known it was coming. Mrs. Chen had been preparing for days, and the personal shopper had brought a dress specifically for the occasion. Deep emerald green, silk, empire waist that made my 7-month belly look elegant rather than unwieldy. She'd sent a hairstylist, too, who'd tamed my unruly hair into soft waves. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. "Beautiful," Mrs. Chen said, adjusting the dress's drape. "Mr. Vitelli will be pleased. It's not about pleasing him." "Isn't it?" Her eyes met mine in the mirror, knowing. "Miss Hart, I've worked for Mr. Vitelli for 8 years. I've seen many women pass through his life. None of them have ever lived here. None of them received contracts or protection or nurseries. You're different. Because of the debt. Because of you." She smoothed the fabric over my shoulders. "The debt is an excuse. He could have collected it 100 different ways. Instead, he brought you here, into his home, his private space. Do you understand what that means? That he's possessive? That he cares?" She stepped back. "Be careful, Miss Hart. Mr. Vitelli is a dangerous man, but he's also a man, and men who care can be more dangerous than men who don't." She left me with that warning, and I descended the stairs feeling like I was walking toward my execution. The guests had already arrived, a dozen people scattered throughout the living room, crystal champagne flutes in hand, conversations flowing in multiple languages. I recognized the type immediately. Wealth and power. The kind of people who shaped cities with phone calls. Dante stood near the windows, deep in conversation with a Chinese man whose expensive suit and cold eyes screamed authority. Marco hovered nearby, ever present. Then Dante saw me. The conversation stopped mid-sentence. His eyes tracked my descent, and something shifted in his expression. Hunger mixed with possession, mixed with something fiercer. He excused himself, crossed to the stairs, met me at the bottom. Elena. My name in his mouth like a prayer. You're breathtaking. It's the dress. It's you. His hand found the small of my back. That possessive touch I'd grown used to. Come. There are people I want you to meet. He guided me through the room, introducing me with careful phrasing. This is Elena Hart. She manages my household. Not girlfriend. Not employee. Something deliberately vague that let people draw their own conclusions. The Chinese man from earlier studied me with calculating eyes. Mr. Vitelli, your household manager is pregnant. Congratulations. The child isn't mine, Dante said smoothly, but Miss Hart is under my protection. I trust that's understood. Something passed between them, a challenge, an acknowledgement. Of course, the man said, his smile not reaching his eyes. Your protection is well known, Mr. Vitelli. Respected. Good. Dante's hand tightened fractionally on my back. I'd hate for there to be any misunderstandings. The evening progressed in a haze of careful conversations and loaded glances. I played my role, smiling, polite, deflecting questions about myself with practiced vagueness. Several women sized me up with barely concealed jealousy. Several men looked at me with speculation that made my skin crawl. Through it all, Dante stayed close, his hand on my back, his body angled protectively between me and anyone who got too familiar, his eyes constantly tracking my comfort level. It should have felt suffocating. Instead, it felt safe. Dinner was elaborate. Courses I couldn't name. Wine I couldn't drink. Conversation that danced around topics I didn't fully understand. Business disguised as pleasure. Alliances forged over dessert. I was exhausted by the time the last guest left, nearly midnight, my feet aching despite the flats. Dante found me on the balcony off the living room, having escaped for air. You did well tonight, he said, joining me at the railing. The city sprawled below, lights like fallen stars. I smiled and said nothing, hardly an accomplishment. You represented my household with grace. That matters. He loosened his tie, the gesture tired. And you made an impression. Several of my associates commented on your composure. Your associates seem dangerous. They are. He didn't deny it. But not to you. Never to you. I turned to face him, the question I'd been holding back for weeks finally breaking free. Why me, Dante? Really? Not the debt, not the contract. Why bring me here? Why protect me? You could have killed me like you... I stopped. Like I killed Michael? He finished the sentence, his voice soft. I didn't kill him, Elena. Though I won't mourn him either, then who did? The Zhao Syndicate, or the Russians he'd also stolen from, or his gambling debts catching up. Michael made enemies like other men make friends. His death was inevitable. His eyes held mine. But you're not Michael. You're innocent. And pregnant. And alone. I couldn't... He paused, seemed to choose his words carefully. I won't let innocent people suffer for others' sins. So this is charity? This is justice. He reached out, cupped my face like he had so many times before. And perhaps something else. What? I haven't decided yet. His thumb traced my cheekbone. You confuse me, Elena Hart. You're not supposed to. What am I supposed to be? A debt. An obligation. A business arrangement. His other hand came up, framing my face. Not someone I think about when I should be working. Not someone whose smile makes me want things I have no right to want. Not someone who makes me question every decision I've made. My breath caught. Dante, I know. He stepped closer, and I could smell him. Sandalwood and wine and something uniquely him. I know this is inappropriate. You're under contract, under my protection. I have all the power here. Anything between us would be wrong. I finished. Complicated, he corrected. But not wrong, never wrong. The baby kicked, hard, right against where his hands rested near my belly. Dante's expression shifted, wonder and longing and something almost painful. He kicks when you're near, I whispered. The baby. He's always more active when you're close. He? I don't know. It feels like a he. I placed my hands over Dante's. The doctor offered to tell me, but I said no. I wanted to be surprised. Elena. My name was rough in his throat. I need to tell you something. What? The Zhao Syndicate. The man you met tonight. Wei Zhang. He runs their operations. He's been pressuring me for information about you, about Michael's debts. Fear spiked through me. What did you tell him? That you're under my protection, that the debt has been transferred to me, that anyone who touches you answers to me. His hands tightened on my face. But he's not satisfied. He wants restitution, beyond money. What kind of restitution? You. The word was barely audible. He suggested that since you were Michael's fiancé, you could work off the debt to them, in whatever capacity they choose. Ice flooded my veins. You told him no. I told him if he or any of his men come near you, I'll burn their operations to the ground and salt the earth behind me. His eyes blazed. I told him you're mine, that I don't share, that this conversation was a courtesy, not a negotiation. And if he doesn't accept that, then there will be war. He said it simply, like commenting on the weather, and I'll win. Because I always win, Elena, especially when I'm protecting what's mine. There it was again. What's mine? But this time, I didn't argue. Because standing there, his hands on my face, the baby kicking between us, the city glittering below, I realized something terrifying. I didn't want to be anyone else's, not Wei Zhang's, not anyone's, just Dante's. Kiss me, I whispered. He froze. Elena, kiss me, please, I need to know if this is real, if you mean what you're saying, if I'm not just imagining. He gentle at first, almost reverent. His lips soft against mine, tasting of wine and want, then deeper, hungry, his hands sliding into my hair, pulling me closer despite my belly between us. I melted into him, into this terrible, wonderful mistake. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. This changes everything, he said. I know. The contract doesn't mention this. Elena. He pulled back, looked at me with those smoke-gray eyes. I can't promise you a normal life. I can't promise safety beyond what I've already given. My world is dangerous, violent. You've seen glimpses, but the reality is, I don't care. And I didn't. God help me, I didn't. I'm already in danger, already trapped. At least this way. This way what? This way I choose my cage. I placed my hand on his chest, felt his heart racing. I choose you. His smile was beautiful and broken. Then you're a fool. Probably. And I'm damned for wanting you anyway. Definitely. He kissed me again, and this time there was no gentleness, just need and claim and promise. When he finally released me, I was dizzy, my lips swollen, my body singing with awareness. Come, he said, taking my hand. You need rest. The baby is fine. But I let him guide me inside, through the penthouse, up the stairs. At my suite door, he paused. I should let you sleep, he said, though he didn't release my hand. You should. I won't take advantage, Elena. Not while you're under contract, not while the power dynamic is, then change it. I stepped closer. Renegotiate. Make this equal. How? Let me choose to stay, not because of debt or obligation, because I want to. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Decision made. Tomorrow, we renegotiate the contract. Catherine can mediate. We'll make this... He struggled for words. Whatever this is, we'll make it right. Equal. Your choice. And tonight? Tonight, you sleep, in your bed, alone. He kissed my forehead, achingly tender. Because when I finally have you, Elena Hart, it will be because you chose me freely, not because circumstances forced your hand. He left me at my door, and I watched him walk away, this dangerous, complicated man who'd somehow become my protector, my captor, my choice. I slept deeply that night, my hand on my belly, the baby quiet for once, dreaming of smoke-gray eyes and promises that might actually be kept. 6 months later, the baby came early. 3 weeks before my due date, my water broke during breakfast. Dante had been reading the paper, drinking espresso, and I'd been stealing glances at him over my toast, a morning ritual we'd fallen into since renegotiating the contract. The new contract was simple. I stayed because I wanted to. He protected me because he chose to. Everything else, the growing affection, the careful touches, the nights we spent talking until dawn, those weren't contractual. Those were real. Dante, I'd said calmly, even as liquid soaked through my pajama pants. I think it's time. He'd moved faster than I'd ever seen. Phone out, calling the private clinic, barking orders to Marco. Within 20 minutes, I was in the SUV, Dante beside me, his hand gripping mine so hard it should have hurt. Breathe, he kept saying. Just breathe, Tesoro. I am breathing. I'd gasped through a contraction. You breathe. Labor lasted 14 hours. Dante stayed with me through all of it, letting me crush his hand, wiping my forehead, talking me through contractions in a mixture of English and Italian that somehow made it bearable. When our daughter finally arrived, screaming, perfect, with a shock of dark hair, the doctor placed her on my chest and I wept. Dante leaned over us both, his hand gentle on her tiny head, and I saw tears on his face. She's perfect, he whispered. Elena, she's perfect. We need a name, I said, exhausted and elated. Julia, he said it without hesitation. After my mother, if you approve. I looked at him, this man who'd started as my captor and become something so much more. Julia Hart Vitelli, I said. His eyes widened. Vitelli? If you want, if you'll... I couldn't finish the question. Yes. He kissed me, soft and sure. Yes, to all of it, forever. If you'll have me, even though I'm trouble, especially because you're trouble. He kissed our daughter's head, my beautiful, impossible trouble. We married quietly 3 months later, in the penthouse, with only Mrs. Chen and Marco as witnesses. The Zhao Syndicate sent congratulations and a jade bracelet worth more than my old apartment, a peace offering. Recognition of Dante's claim. I wore white, not because I was naive enough to think either of us was innocent, but because I wanted to. Dante wore black, his eyes never leaving mine as we spoke vows that meant everything. I promise to protect you, he said, to cherish you, to never lie to you about who I am or what I do. I promise to stay, I answered, to choose you, every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. When we kissed, Julia, held by Mrs. Chen, made a sound of protest, and we laughed. Our family, imperfect and complicated and built on debts and danger, but ours. That night, after Julia was asleep in her nursery, Dante found me on our balcony, the same one where we'd first kissed. Regrets? He asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind, his hands settling over my stomach where they always seemed to belong. None. I leaned into him. You? Only that I didn't find you sooner. He kissed my neck, that I let you suffer for even a day. I wasn't ready for you sooner. I needed to be broken first, desperate. Only then could I see you clearly. And what do you see? I turned in his arms, looked up at the man who'd saved me and claimed me and loved me in equal measure. Everything, I said simply. I see everything. He kissed me then, and the city sparkled below us, indifferent to our story. A waitress and a mafia boss, a debt that became a choice, a cage that became a home, and love, fierce and complicated and real, blooming in the spaces between danger and devotion. I'd come to a cemetery to mourn a man who'd destroyed me. Instead, I'd found the man who'd rebuild me, piece by careful piece, until I was whole again, until I was his, until we were everything.